Hello everyone. Session 6 is very interesting because we're going to be talking about issues that are very pertinent to law enforcement organizations, and those are supervising a diverse workforce. Today there's no question that diversity is a reality. If you look, the American workforce is changing in regards to age, gender, race, national origin, sexual orientation, and physical disability and physical ability. Minority populations are the fastest growing segment of the workforce, with Hispanic populations growing the fastest. There are all types of concerns when we're looking at managing diversity in law enforcement organizations that can range from legal to demographic to economic to political concerns. This will touch on virtually all aspects of a firm's operations, especially on the supervisory level. There's a term that is very important, that is protected group employees. Protected group employees are classes of employees who have been afforded certain legal protections in their employment situations. Often this protection comes primarily from civil rights legislation or from EEOC regulations and from numerous court decisions. The underlying legal philosophy is that many individuals that are in these classes have been unfairly or illegally discriminated against, and so they should be afforded special consideration to enhance their opportunities for fair treatment and employment. If you look at some of the different classifications, race and ethnic origin are one, sex, looking at females in particular, a physical or mental disability, age, and then religion, and military service if you're a veteran, which is of course very important for students at Texas A&M University Central Texas, as we are a military serving institution. Laws and regulations do not prevent a supervisor from taking disciplinary action against protected group employees. There probably is a myth that some supervisors will have, saying, oh, I can't discipline this person because they're a protected group employee and they're going to file a grievance or a complaint and it's going to get me in trouble. That is a very, very, very big misconception. As a supervisor, you have a responsibility to treat all employees the same. And so if you have an employee, for example, who is late to a shift turnout meeting, that employee needs to be treated the same as everyone else, even if they're a member of that protected group category. And if you witness something, especially an observable behavior like tardiness, it needs to be dealt with in the appropriate manner. You don't want any perceptions that you're treating someone more favorably than others just because they're a member of that protected group. Otherwise, what could happen, you could have complaints based on reverse discrimination, which is also an issue that's important to think about in law enforcement organizations. When you're supervising racial and ethnic minority employees, it's important to remember that they may feel a strong sense of resentment towards other employees. This could be real or perceived. The fact that they might believe that they're being treated in a racially insensitive manner. And so you want to be sensitive to your minority employees who may have experienced discriminatory treatment or believe that they're experiencing discrimination. And if you have someone that comes up to you and wants to make a complaint based on race, this is very, very serious. There are so many complaints that are based on race, and this is something that you should definitely refer to your supervisor. It should be referred to human resources and dealt with. The one thing that you never, ever, ever want to do is in some way punish that person for exerting rights that they have under federal law. So make very careful that you treat that with a high level of importance. If a minority employee complains of harassment or discriminatory treatment, you also want to have what's known as a cultural competency. And by that, it means that you can see where they're coming from, you're adapting to different cultural communities, and you're able to communicate with that individual. Unfortunately, differences in ethnic and cultural backgrounds can contribute to prejudicial attitudes and treatment of minority employees. And any preconceived beliefs that the supervisor has should be left at home. When you come there, your goal is to be able to be sensitive to all of the issues that racial and ethnic minorities may bring to the table, and to do that best, you need to have this cultural competency. And it's really something that not everyone is born with, and hopefully you'll work at a large enough facility where they'll be giving training in cultural sensitivity. In fact, I think that's pretty much standard in all law enforcement organizations to some degree or another. But getting those skills is very, very important being a manager of criminal justice personnel. Supervising females. Law enforcement may be one of the number one occupations as far as having the highest levels of females entering the workforce that was traditionally dominated by men. Today it's almost 50-50%, depending on where you go. It's probably not quite that high, but you see it a lot in some of the larger cities. That doesn't mean, though, that this issue has been fully taken care of. There's still enormous problems that can arise from men that are, resentful and maybe openly criticize some of the women in law enforcement. And this is an issue that I always think is important to discuss. As a supervisor, you want to make it clear that disciplinary action will be taken if anyone is subjected to any kind of abuse or harassment. And we've talked about this before, we've read about it. To do otherwise, you could open yourself to liability. And even though that standard for liability is very high under the Onicle decision, that shouldn't deter anyone from doing what is morally the right thing. And so that's something that you should definitely be prepared to do. And then also, there's another issue. Can law enforcement organizations have family-friendly cultures? And by that I mean, are you able to make accommodations for that single mother, who has to pick up her child at 3 because no one else is there to do it? These are issues that I believe law enforcement organizations should strive to be more sensitive to in the years to come. Again, we talked about sexual harassment, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but even innuendo and jokes, even if the recipient of those jokes is acting as though it's welcome, that could be a defense mechanism, and really it's unprofessional. Even if it's not a bona fide case of harassment, it should be dealt with. I'm also a fan of offering females with additional training opportunities. When I was in the prison system, we didn't really offer female correctional officers with any training based on there being a female in a male inmate institution, and I always wondered why they didn't. And it would have been helpful to have the male correctional officers receive that training too, so they would have been sensitive to it. This could have discouraged any type of the sexual stereotyping where you see demeaning language or judgment that's often used by men. It could be by inmates or by correctional officers against these female employees. And I think that type of training, if you can have gender-based training, is very important. and that's also a pretty good way to prevent liability. Pregnancy issues. This is a good one. Most law enforcement employers have policies that allow a pregnant employee to work as long as she and her physician certify that this is okay. Also, it's important to know that law enforcement employers are not obligated to provide any type of easier assignment. So while supervisors must see to it that there's no discrimination, they can give these assignments, if you look at the last point at the very bottom, but they're not required to give them easier job assignments. That's something I think I disagree with for a lot of reasons, but there are probably issues that you have to treat everyone the same, and that's something that we'll probably go into a little bit more this week in the discussion, but I think there will be some disagreement on that. The Family and Medical Leave Act, this is applicable for men too. If the child is born, the male employee gets to take advantage of that, meaning he gets time off up to 12 weeks from work. And this is not just for having a baby born, but if you adopt a child, I believe you also get that under the FMLA. So that's very important, and as a manager of CJ personnel, you want to plan for that. It's very important too, if you notice someone that, if an employee comes up to you and tells you she's pregnant, the first question you should ask her is say, okay, is it okay if I tell people? And if she says no, respect that. And if she says yes, even then be careful, because that is medical information. You don't want to share that without the proper release. And then employees with disabilities, we've gone into that before. On the hiring end for the upper echelon managers, they do not want to require a pre-employment medical examination. It's just not something you can do. The exception, of course, is a drug test. And then don't make any type of pre-employment inquiries about the nature of an applicant's disability. Once there's an offer in hand, then a medical examination can be given. It is warranted, especially in law enforcement. There's also the issue of religion. Generally, employers may not discriminate in employment practices because of an individual's religious beliefs. However, as we read in both the Atkinson and the Ross book, a seniority system is very important. And just because someone can't work on a Sabbath day does not mean you have to give them off for that day if there's a seniority system in place. These are all issues that probably will come up. Some of you maybe have dealt with these before as supervisors. The final point I want to make, and I'm about to get cut off here, but it's about protected group supervisors. If you yourself are a female manager of criminal justice personnel or a racial minority, you might have issues. And if you read some of these below, you can see some of the different issues that you might have as a manager. And what do you do being a member of that protected group? Those are just things to think about. And I think I'm going to quit now while I'm ahead, but I look forward to seeing each of you online. Have a great day.